Welcome to Inspiring Business with your host, Mark Bullock. In every episode, Mark interviews others to share stories of thought leaders who inspire others by making a difference. You can find this show on www.videosocials.net and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now here's the host of Inspiring Business, Mark Bullock.
Hi and welcome. Today my guest is my friend and longtime client, Clare Piro. Clare is an attorney and mediator in Westchester, New York. She is the founder of her own divorce and mediation, family mediation practice in Westchester. And you can find her at clarepiromediation.com, which of course there will be multiple links that are associated with this podcast. Also, I wanted to note that Clare is the past president and I believe current board member of the New York State Council on Divorce Mediation. So she really is a leader in the industry. Welcome, Clare. So glad to have you.
Why, thank you, Mark, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I have often said in the past that I drank the Kool-Aid more than a decade ago about the values and benefits of people looking at mediation instead of a litigated process or a truly contentious process, not only from the standpoint of just the mental anguish that it helps people work through and be able to move forward with their lives rather than going to war per se, but also it turns out it's radically less expensive and less time consuming. And so we do have and have had many divorce mediator clients for our company, Practice Marketing Incorporated, through our multitude of services, actually. And so I've always said that I feel like mediation is an enlightened profession in the fact that it's not just about getting to the agreement from a legal standpoint, it's actually getting resolution and being able to move forward. I'm sure that you agree with that.
Absolutely. Your understanding is completely on target. And just a little shout out back to you. You've been instrumental in the mediation community in terms of helping us to be able to promote ourselves. And for the council, you're extraordinarily generous. So we appreciate you as much as you appreciate us in mediation.
Well, thank you. And so, and I'm never going to say that I'm sorry that I drank the Kool-Aid, because I really do. I consider it one of our core industries that we serve, and it's the one that I get the most pleasure from. That and mental health. Frankly, it's just because you guys are about helping people. So. And helping them move forward with their lives and inserting who you are and the value that you bring in having conversations at the most difficult time for most people, for them to have a meaningful conversation and actually move forward rather than getting stuck in let's go to war, let's have a battle, I need, I've been wronged and I need to seek retribution and unfortunately, which brings me back to, my first question for you is, you've been an attorney longer than you've been a mediator. What had you as an attorney decide to start a mediation practice?
Well, actually, to go back a little further, when I got out of law school, I started as an associate in a small firm that was really real estate and estate work. And the few matrimonial cases that came in were given to me as an associate because I was an associate. And that's when I learned that I liked family law. And I think the main reason was because of that really close connection with clients. And I felt like I was able to help people at the time when they really needed help. I also think that family law in general is an interesting part of the law. I've been practicing a long time, as you noted. So in the early 90s, mediation was definitely around, and divorce mediation was being practiced, but not as prevalent as it is now. So it took me a while to learn about it, and I learned about it through Nancy Gardner, who was a local mediator and a member of the New York State Council on Divorce Mediation. And I started by being a review attorney for her clients. And because she was not an attorney mediator, I was doing her legal agreements.
Mhm.
And she kept telling me about mediation and encouraging me to take the training. When I finally took the training, then I realized that this was my calling. And I stopped representing clients in any adversarial setting. And then several years after that, I stopped doing real estate and estate work. So I am now, and I don't want to say just a mediator because it's not just a mediator, but my practice is solely as a mediator and representing parties in mediation.
Terrific. So, and I think there's some important distinctions, because I think a lot of people get tied up into it's just about the law,
Right.
or it's just about the money, right? And one of the things that, again, we've got so many years working with, you and many others who are mediators, is that your approach is far more holistic.
Yes.
And that wasn't really a question that I had down on the list, but
Right.
could you expand on that thought a little bit?
Definitely. You know, I think that part of my draw to mediation is really the sense of balance, that there's two sides to everything. And that the way that I used to practice in an adversarial setting, I was just advocating for my client. And my job was just to advocate for that client and to look out for that client's interests. My nature is kind of to see a bigger picture and to try to help clients reach a settlement that's going to work for both of them. That whole kind of win lose is just really misplaced when you're talking about a couple separating and their children and how are they going to live going forward. There shouldn't be a winner and a loser. Because who's definitely going to be the loser in that scenario will be the children. There really needs to be a mutual agreement that's made. And so much in the typical adversarial system is based on the skills of the attorney, and that really shouldn't be the deciding factor.
Well, at the very least, or at the most, it's only one of a consideration. I mean, even selecting a mediator, there's mediators that have not a lot of experience, and there's mediators that have tons of experience. In your case, it's not only have you got lots of experience as far as years and years of doing it, and helping hundreds, I'm assuming, of clients successfully navigate the process, but you're a part of really the refinement of the industry through the New York State Council of Divorce Mediation. In other words, you've taken a leadership, because I know that organization is all about education and experience and gaining wisdom and best practices, and getting the word out of mediation. Because another phrase that I'm often accused of saying is that we need to get rid of the word alternative when we're saying alternative dispute resolution, because it may have been an alternative, but really I think it should be the primary
Right.
consideration. Because yes, not every single couple is the best possible candidate for mediation, but frankly I think most are. And at the very least, they should look at it and consider it and talk to a mediator or two before putting on the gloves, as it were, and jumping into a litigated process. I mean, don't you feel that people really owe it to themselves and their families to consider doing something other than going to war?
Absolutely. And actually, that's the tagline of the council, that mediation should be the first option for a couple who's separating. And I think that's why it's important to, in terms of educating the public, the council has done a wonderful job with that. But I think individual mediators also need to help clients understand the benefits of mediation. Um, and that, to me, includes offering a consultation at no charge. Not, it's not a legal consultation. It's not where, it's not substantive discussions, but just even a half hour of time to explain the process, explain how it works. I explain how I work, which may be differently than other mediators. And the most important thing is to give those two clients at the same time the opportunity to meet me and see if I'm someone with whom they both want to work, because obviously the mediator has to be agreeable to both. So when I'm speaking to some potential client on the phone about this, I say it's like a no commitment way of just learning and seeing if it's going to be a good fit. I'll say that most of the clients with whom I have an initial consultation do retain me for mediation. But even if they don't, I think it's time well spent by me, because I get to talk about mediation, which is something I like to do.
Well, and along that lines, if they're just starting to think about, right, getting separated, or they're weighing their options and they're looking at what's possible, what kinds of information have you made available to them for free, and where would they find that information?
Well, at consultations, when we used to do them in person, I would give them a very nice folder of information. And now that I'm doing consultations mainly by Zoom, I send them a packet of information that talks about how mediation works, gives my background, but importantly, gives them a brief summary of the law and a checklist of things that have to be addressed. I provide them with the summary of the law because there's so much bad information online, and so much information that people get from their neighbor, from their hairstylist, from their, sister's boyfriend. And so even though it's brief, it's complete and accurate. So I think it's good for them to have that. And for the checklist, I think it's good for them, even if they don't talk to each other before the mediation about substantive terms, it's good for them to think about the things that have to be addressed so they're prepared for the mediation. So I think that's really valuable information for them to have. Also, of course, on my website, I've been doing blogs with you for more years than I can count now, and most recently videos. And so that's on my blog page, and that's a wealth of information, not just about mediation, but also about the substantive law.
And so basically you just compile two different, what I would say is two different levels of information. So in other words, if they're really getting serious about this is something that is looking imminent, and they're ready to have a conversation with you, you can give them a deeper context. You can give them, again, how the law works, how the mediation process works, et cetera, et cetera. But what we've been helping you with, as far as for a number of years now, is if they're just contemplating, if they're just considering, if they haven't necessarily even broached the subject with their spouse yet, they're at a point that, guess what? They're online and they're looking for information, and maybe they're in confidence, they're asking friends or a mental health professional or another attorney, that helps them with some other area of their lives, as an example, or their clergy, as an example. And you've literally built a library of information that is specifically for those that are just considering, that are just thinking about it, and really wanting to understand the impacts on the family, and what is a parenting agreement, and if we're not even married yet, should we consider getting a prenuptial agreement? And just it's truly a library of across all areas of marriage and divorce, and leading up to and all the way to the completion of, if that's the choice that comes about. And so I'm going to, fill in the blanks on that a little bit. So it's not only your website, it's your LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
And now that you've been doing videos for the last couple of years, it's also your YouTube channel. So so somebody that wants to get to know you, wants to get to know a little bit more information before they have to make that scary phone call. And I think that if they see you in this context and on other videos and read a few of your blog posts, etc., that's going to be a lot less scary call, because you're anything but threatening. This is not like calling a divorce attorney that wants to get you on a retainer and let's start the fight, right? This is kind of the opposite.
Yes.
How do we not have you start the fight? How do we, cool down the temperature a little bit and work towards setting you up for a successful life post-divorce, and that also being for your spouse, and almost from my perspective, even more importantly, that of your children and your extended family, right? And the families around you. So along those lines, and again, we will have links associated with this podcast, however you're consuming it, for Claire's YouTube channel, website, LinkedIn profile, those types of things. So go ahead.
Oh no, thanks, Mark. And just on that idea of the scary phone call, truly, it's just the first step. And the best way to think about it, it's completely without any commitment whatsoever. And I can't tell you how many times I get a phone call asking about mediation, and then nothing happens for, it could be years. And the person says, oh, I spoke to you 2 years ago. And I go back in my notes and I can find that. So it doesn't have to be scary. Nobody knows except for that person and me. And, I really encourage people not to let their fear stop them from doing that, because it truly can go nowhere if they want it to go nowhere. But it could also help them get to the next step if they're ready to go to the next step.
Absolutely. And so they do take advantage of looking at and getting some information, and do give Claire a call and schedule a conversation, because it's another distinction that I'd like to draw, and correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially if one party goes to a divorce attorney and has a consult with that divorce attorney, is it still the case that divorce attorney then can't potentially represent the other party, or is that something that's
no, that would still be an ethical violation,
right.
Conflict of interest, definitely.
So, and good, and thank you, and thank you, because I think it's an important distinction that most people don't realize. They don't have that when they're having a conversation with you.
Oh no.
Right. So because you're not legally representing as an attorney both parties, but as a mediator, you are representing the family.
Correct.
Right.
Well, yeah, I'm assisting the family. I'm not acting as a lawyer when I mediate.
Correct.
I'm acting as a mediator, but yes, helping the family. And most people, frankly, don't just call one mediator, because it is something that's so particular. And again, that's why I can't understand how someone could choose a mediator without having a consult with them, because you just have to feel right with them. Right. And you have to feel that with that mediator may be right for someone else, but not right for you. So it's not unusual for someone to call 3 different mediators.
Terrific.
Potentially.
Well, and in along those lines, as what I was speaking about earlier, because yes, we want to convince people and encourage people to get past that, scariness and that trepidation about talking to a professional, because frankly, that's when it starts to feel real, right? That's but you're not quite ready for it to start to feel real. That's the reason why there's so much other information, again, through your blog, through your LinkedIn profile, through your YouTube channel. My apologies. And using you as an example, I'd like to take just a moment to kind of talk about what we do and how this kind of throws in, because clients like you're the author of any of this content. It's your voice, it's your words, it's your et cetera. But there's a lot of technology that's kind of behind that, and there's a lot of, shall we say, accountability to actually get it done, because you, as well as all of the clients that we've had over the last 15 years with practice marketing, have the same issue. And that is, once you're busy serving clients, the whole, getting yourself out there, the marketing, has to take second fiddle always to client service. But we act as a bit of an accountability partner and technical and logistical support to actually get things done. So what am I talking about? Well, you started with us with our main our initial service, which was phoneblogger.net, and you can find that at that website address, phoneblogger.net. And what we found was we could either call you or have you draft something if you preferred to write out a draft, but we could call you, have an editor interview you in a short conversation, 5, 10, 15 minutes at the most. We record that conversation. They ask you a couple of questions. You have a topic in mind, and it's really kind of stream of consciousness off the top of your head, just as you would having that consult with somebody across the table. If somebody said, "What about parenting agreements?" Okay. And then you speak for a few minutes. We've recorded that. We transcribe that, and the editor then takes that time to craft your words, your answers to those questions into a readable and digestible blog article. And then you, of course, then read it with them, make sure that everything's okay. Oh, we need to, the wording context needs to change because of the, legal context, et cetera, whatever it is. So it's your article, it's your words, et cetera. And then we just make sure that that goes through a whole QA process, and that gets posted to your blog, and that gets sent out to all your social media channels, and that goes out to newsletters, which is another way people can get information from you. And I know that there's the ability for them to sign up for your newsletter on your website, and I highly recommend it, because it's just a constant stream of really great information, with, again, no obligation to take it any further other than just gaining that information. So that was Phone Blogger. And then the next step from that for us was video and audio combined. So the thing about video is that, look, the vast majority of people that are consuming content online will jump to video before they'll go to text, or before they'll even go to audio. And the social media platforms, the LinkedIns, the Facebooks, the Twitters, et cetera, are prioritizing video. And in prioritizing that video, that means that there's only, and just so that a little bit of a statistic for context, there's only 1/10 of 1/10 of 1/10 of 1% of the world's population who are YouTube creators. Okay. But how many YouTube videos do you see? How many videos do you see on LinkedIn and Facebook and other social media channels, right? So there's vastly more people on social media than are actually creating video. Yet what we see in our feeds is a lot of video. That just goes to prove that the social media platforms recognize the impact and the value and the likelihood of engagement for video in this. So as your feeds, whatever social media platform that you're on, as you're looking at that feed, realize that it's only a tiny percentage of the people that are actually on that platform that are creating videos, but you're seeing a lot of videos in your feed. So if you're not doing video, you're really kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So you took on and became a Video Socials client, and Video Socials was created for those that don't know how to do that may not have the camera confidence yet, may not know how to be on video. And in doing so, they're not just talking to this inanimate object called the camera, they're having a conversation with others in the room. It's a peer club that we get together and we take turns recording videos and giving each other support, encouragement, and feedback on that. And that's videosocials.net. Again, that's at the list. And then if somebody's looking to take the next step to do what you and I are doing right now, which is to having a video interview podcast, we created our videointerviewpodcast.com, which is our newest service, and it's beyond beta, but we just started at the beginning of the year, and I'm one of the first clients in the fact that I've got an entire team that helps me pull together all of the vast levels of resources and scheduling and rescheduling and finding guests and getting their information and preparing to do these types of podcasts, and then getting it out to all the various platforms, etc. So that again is videointerviewpodcast.com. So thank you for letting me kind of what we're up to, and I hope to have you someday choose to do video interview podcast, because we'd love to have you as a client in that context as well, because I really think that what you're talking about is your desire to have a consult, right? And is to have a deeper conversation and to have a more meaningful conversation, right? And that's kind of the difference between putting out, quote, marketing videos or branding videos, the 1, 2, 3 minute videos that are going out there, in which you don't have time to go into depth, and you're not necessarily having a conversation with somebody else. Right. So we're having an interaction, we're having a conversation, and we're having this approximately a half hour of content that we're creating here. But in doing so, we're gaining information from each other. We're engaging at a different level in our own brains and in our own conversation, which is far more attractive for those who are trying to get further and deeper information. So it's, again, the longer form and the combination of two people having a conversation about a topic rather than just you or I being a talking head, as an example. So
I will definitely give it some thought. And I just want to say, Mark, I would not have that wealth of information but for you. My web person, before I started with blogging, I was so long in between blog posts that he said, please don't put the dates on it, because it's months in between. So with you, yes, there was that commitment to do it, and forget about doing videos and posting videos on my own. I never would have done it without you. So you may find me, being a podcast client as well, because every new thing you do does seem to be welcome in terms of my marketing practices, and that's anything I would have done on my own.
Well, thank you. And in along that lines, I mean, we are what used to be called a market-driven company. In other words, we only develop services that are actually wanted and needed by our clients. And I'm going to say that I think mediation is the same thing. So what would you like to, close with today? And what point would you want to get across to people in respect to how is mediation really engineered to be really the primary option they should be considered?
Well, because it goes back to me with the idea of that timing, and when you had spoken about the scary phone call, that everything in mediation is client driven. So if you're not ready to have the next meeting for a year, you can, as long as you both agree, you can wait a year to have the next meeting. You're on your own timetable. And along with that decision on timing, obviously mediation means that you're making your decisions on everything. So you are in such control of the outcome, you're in control of the timing, that I just can't understand why, in the face of that, someone would prefer to have a judge be in control of the timing or have attorneys manipulate what the outcome would be. It seems that that should be the primary focus, that idea of self-determination in all aspects of the process.
And for me, I think it has to do with, why would they choose that? Because one, they don't know it. They don't know that it exists, and or they don't realize that the litigation process, and whether that actually end up in a court of law, more likely it's going to be a settlement where a judge, as you said, is going to make decisions for them, right? Which is I can't even conceive of wanting to do that, right? Why am I going to let somebody that doesn't know me make decisions about my family, my kids, my parenting, et cetera, et cetera? Now, there are boundaries that we have to stay within. As an example, if somebody is going to get spousal support, or that, what level that spousal, there's certain boundaries but there's a lot of flexibility within those boundaries that I don't think people realize either, right? So, and that's exactly what's being negotiated when you have two attorneys that are basically going to battle. Is no, I want it more this way. No, I want it more that way. Well, no, what works for everybody, right? It's always going to be a compromise. It's never going to be all one side or the other, even in a litigated process. It just isn't going to be that way. It's going to be a compromise. So why would you give the power of that compromise to a third party judge versus working with a mediator who allows you to have a conversation about, okay, let's make our own compromise. Let's figure out what's best for our kids. And as you said, and here you can see I drank the Kool-Aid, even though I've never been separated or divorced, right? But I just see so much value in, let's work together. We don't know how to work together, so we need a mediator. So that mediator just is going to help us work together to figure out what's best for you, for me, and for our kids.
Yeah.
And that is, as you said, on our own timeline, in our own agreement. It's literally, correct me if I'm wrong, but they write their own agreement. I mean, you turn it into legal term, as an attorney, you turn that into what's necessary to be a legally binding document. But you are not dictating to them, you have to do this way or you have to do that way. And there's so much give and take. Well, you have this piece of art that's an heirloom, and I have this, money that was set aside, before we got together, and maybe we didn't do a prenuptial agreement, and so I'm going to keep this, and you're and you took advantage of me, so I want part of that. No, sit down and have a conversation. It is a negotiation rather than a battle. So
absolutely. And it doesn't mean that everybody agrees and everything is wonderful. There's a lot of emotion that's going to be involved in a mediation. And mediators are trained to help the clients work through those very strong emotions. Whereas lawyers maybe are kind of trained to exacerbate that, not purposefully, but just by the process. And nasty letters going back and forth through attorneys that clients read are devastating.
We could go on for days, but I mean, that one piece alone, it's like, which is going to land better for the other party. I'd like to talk to you about this, and I know that you may have some reservations. let's include that in our next mediation, in which, again, we have that third party that is working to resolve something rather than getting a letter or an email that says, I want this. It's got to be this way. I'm only, because you did this, I'm doing that. And it basically, as you said, there's some really wonderful divorce attorneys out there.
Absolutely.
But the process is combative. It's just natural. It's naturally built into the process, and mediation is exactly the opposite. So thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the people that you serve. Thank you for the impact that you make, because you're one of the people I had in mind when I created this series on inspiring business, because you and others inspire me, especially in this dispute resolution versus dispute war of the divorce and family mediation world. And I'm humbled by and so appreciate all that you do for your clients, for their families, and the impact that has on the greater community of the world, frankly.
Well, thank you, Mark. And in turn, I thank you, because truly, I don't think that I would be where I am now in terms of my practice without you. So
I'll get all around as another one of our mutual best friends is Ada Haslager's divorce and family mediation as well.
Most definitely, and definitely positively, because as I will quote her, that if you really want to build a mediation practice, you don't introduce yourself as an attorney or a therapist, you introduce yourself as a mediator, and you stop doing other things. And it was a little scary when I told my husband, I'm not doing real estate and estate work anymore, I'm just going to go build a mediation practice. But it worked.
Here we are, and congratulations on that, and wish you only the best as far as continued success. Again, all of Clare's information online and how to get in touch with her, how to get more information from her, read her blog posts, watch her videos, will be associated with this video. And again, I'm Mark Bullock, the co-founder of videosocials.net, the chief operating officer of Practice Marketing Incorporated, and all of our information, of course, will be contained as well. And I encourage you to come back and subscribe to however you're viewing or listening to this particular presentation. Subscribe so that you'll get more of great guests like Clare Piro. Take care.
You've been listening to Inspiring Business with your host, Mark Bullock. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing this show with others. You can catch prior episodes on www.videosocials.net and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.